Good morning to everybody on the US side, and a very good afternoon to those of you in Africa. Thanks once again for joining our webinar. There is hopefully today we're going to be able to take you through a product journey on what you should be looking out for in the design and development of your packaging in order for it to become the most successful possible way of attracting a consumer's attention. So in today's session, there is going to be quite a significant amount of data, and there is going to be quite a significant amount of information that maybe just jot down a couple of questions that you might have and use the Q&A session, the Q&A tab in the webinar. And our team will try to go through as much of the questions as what we possibly can and answer those to the best of our ability. You're also always welcome to contact us directly. A lot of you that have joined the USATD network are starting to receive information back from us and requests for additional information. So you do have our contact details, but we'll also share our contact details towards the end of the webinar as well. So essentially what I want to try to emphasize today as part of the opening statement is that packaging isn't just a functional element anymore. It's a critical component of your product strategy. And it's the first real physical interaction that a consumer has with your product. And essentially what that does is it makes it a vital touch point for your marketing manager as well as the general consumers itself. So we're going to cover the critical role of packaging and how that's going to drive consumer interests. We're also going to cover a little bit of the science behind successful packaging and having a look at the emotional connection and its impact on how this influences consumer behavior. We're going to have a look at a couple of real-world examples, something that will resonate with all of you, having a look at some of the iconic brands and how they're effective and what their differentiation is in terms of packaging strategies. We're going to have a look at the importance of keeping your product refreshed to maintain its relevance. And lastly, we're going to touch on the economic implications of choosing between, your brand and a private label. So a couple of things that I'm going to discuss with you in terms of the critical role of packaging. Sorry, I'm going to have to pause for 1 second. Apologies. Apologies, I actually had the wrong slides up. So a couple of things that we're going to touch, and you might actually see that some of these are repeated throughout the webinar. But the very first element to kind of have a look at is really the critical role that packaging has on driving consumer interest and engagement. So first impressions matter. Um, well-designed packaging instantly communicates with potential customers. Um, and what that does is it so and again, terribly sorry, guys, we've had a couple of technical issues this morning. Um, let's have a look at the critical role of packaging and how that's going to drive your consumer interest. And a couple of things. There's going to be 5 key touch points during this information session. And we will go into a lot of detail on each of these as we progress through the time today. So the first is, first impressions really matter. That is really where the customer is going to instantly try to get the information that you are trying to communicate to them. Um, the second is, how do we have a look at differentiating your products from crowded market? Then the third element to take cognizance of is the emotional connection and how we start to have a look at building brand loyalty. The fourth element is functionality and convenience. Is the packaging actually functional? Is it easy to store? Is it easy to merchandise? And how convenient is it for the retailer to actually stock that product on shelf, but also for the consumer to actually store that product when they get it home? And then obviously, one of the very, very big driving factors here in the US at the moment is the switch to sustainable packaging. So understanding the retail environment, I think it's critically important to kind of understand how competitive shelf space actually is. The average US grocery retailer can carry anywhere between 30 and 40,000 SKUs on an annual basis. So you're really, really working in a highly competitive space. What retailers do is they measure the profitability or the anticipated profitability per square inch. Um, you would obviously hear about things called planograms, for example, and there is entire departments amongst the larger retailers here in the United States that literally try to fit product based on the packaging dimensions that you supply to them. They literally try to fit it into a shelf, almost like a jigsaw puzzle. And that metric directly influences whether a product is given a prime location or whether it is actually just given a location towards the bottom of the shelf. So those products that are anticipated to deliver strong financial yields and strong financial performances, those ones are given prime location on shelf. And what that does is it starts to trigger your ability to have a better negotiation tactic with any of the retailers. In essence, those that are expected to generate a higher return are those that are going to be allocated the premium shelf space. Also here to take note of is efficiency in terms of your packaging design. A lot of the retailers these days are having a look at self-merchandising master cartons, for example. So something that they can literally take, slot directly into a shelf, and they don't have to worry about actually taking it out of a master case and individually merchandising each of those items. So if you have a look at spices here in the United States, a big company like McCormick's, for example, they've actually got inserts that they actually pay for and they put into the shelves. However, guys, let's be realistic. As some of the producers out of Africa, we operate on very, very tight budgets. We operate on, margins where we're looking at gathering a return on investment for ourselves, and we don't really have the marketing budget to be able to compete with some of those big boys. So really what we've got to do is we've got to have a look at creating an efficient product that is going to give those retailers the return on investment that they're making. Because bear in mind, their shelf space is their investment in your product. If they are giving up their shelf space, they need to know that it's actually going to be worth their while. Ultimately, a successful product will influence assortment decisions going forward into the next year and the subsequent years thereafter. So let's talk a little bit about the first impressions on your packaging. Consumer behavior insights that we pull from pools of data here in the United States. General research shows that a customer is going to make a purchasing decision within 7 seconds. And your packaging communicates either the quality or the brand identity. So good design packaging is going to give you that initial advantage. It then also leads into the trust and the quality perception. Again, well-designed packaging will either resonate into a customer's trust, and that's where some of the private label product actually comes into play, but also really good quality packaging and nicely printed packaging resonates into a high quality product as well. So let's have a look at a couple of real world examples. Okay. Apple. Okay. The Apple iPhone packaging has become synonymous. It's iconic. It's minimalistic. However, it is seen as an extremely high quality item. It's a premium item. So if you have a look at the actual packaging, the cost of their packaging isn't that much, but it's just the way that the packaging is actually designed. And then when you really have a look at a high-end example like Tiffany and Company, the jewelry store guys, everything that they do is packed in a blue box. Whether you're buying a christening teaspoon that has cost you $100, or you're buying a Tiffany brooch that is costing you $45,000, it's all packed in this iconic blue box. And a brand that is really starting to resonate extremely well with US customers at the moment is Ethiopian coffee. So Ethiopian coffee, irrespective of who it comes from, the brand Ethiopian coffee is starting to resonate very, very well with the US retailers. There has been a very, very effective communication through the packaging design, okay, by US consumers that are interested in the ethical connotations of the product that is actually coming out of Ethiopia. So some of the science behind successful packaging design is what marketing managers and retailers call the cognitive load. Okay. And in essence, what the cognitive load is around simplicity, but it's the mental effort that a consumer faces processing the information that is you are trying to communicate on your packaging. So simple designs with clear and concise, effective messaging are far more effective because they reduce the cognitive load. It makes it easier for a customer to quickly understand the product and make that purchasing decision. Less often when it's when you're in a crowded market space, that cognitive load, the quicker and more effective that you are on communicating that is going to ensure that you get that initial impulse purchase. The second element is what is referred to as the power of the golden ratio. So many successful packaging designs subtly use the golden ratio. So that's a mathematical ratio found in nature that is aesthetically pleasing to the human eye. These principles help designers create balanced, harmonious layouts, naturally attractive. They make the product more appealing, etc. So when the math is right, it just kind of clicks with people. So you've then also got to have a look at what the emotional connections are going to be, right? So why do people love packaging? Why do people love puppies on packaging? It's a fun fact, right? Humans are biologically wired to respond to cute images like puppies, thanks to the increase of oxytocin, often referred to as the love hormone. While it's not necessarily a scientific fact to put a puppy on your cereal box, okay, people might start to get that warm and fuzzy feeling around your product. Just kind of don't forget to actually put the cereal in the box itself. So let's talk about the neuroscience behind packaging and visual processing. Speed of processing. The human brain processes visual information 60,000 times faster than the text. Just think about when the appearance of the brain came onto the screen today, how quickly you recognize that it was a brain rather than actually having to read that text. Symmetry and simple designs work very, very well as well because it decreases that cognitive load. And the impact of color is what is so critically important as well. A couple of real world examples of what I'm referring to here is let's have a look at the iconic red logo of Coca-Cola, and I'll touch that a little bit further. It's red that resonates with Coca-Cola. It's a color that they've identified. A second example would be the McDonald's Golden Arches. So everything with McDonald's has got that M on it, whether it's a little burger that you buy or actually the branding of the store themselves. And another one that has become very successful is Lush Cosmetics. So they've gone with a minimalistic approach, but they've also gone with a very easy font choice. So this is where we start to talk about some of the key elements of the design, typography and readability. So your font choice becomes extremely important, okay? It needs to be easy to read, and it's got to be able to effectively communicate in that split 5 to 7 seconds what you're trying to communicate. The visual hierarchy of what the content of your product is needs to be carefully considered as well. And by visual hierarchy is where are you putting the main name of your product? What are you saying the product actually is? And what are the benefits, whether it's a health claim, et cetera, et cetera. That is what is important in terms of the visual hierarchy. And then when it comes to something like cultural relevance, and this is very particularly important for products that are coming out of Africa. Just think about Amarula. You know, Amarula is recognized right throughout Africa. It's recognized in Europe, and it's recognized here in the United States as well. And then obviously the material impact itself, your choice of materials, and how that is eco-friendly, or whether it's a luxury finish that you're putting on, that is what is critically important to understand as well. So again, a couple of real world examples on what we're talking about. Let's have a look at something like the iconic shape of the Absolute vodka bottle or the Coca-Cola bottle. Both of those are well-recognized shapes of packaging. Another real-world example on a minimalistic label is something that is like Method, which is a brand here in the United States, or a brand like RMS. So very clean-cut colors, minimalistic. The name tells everything about the product itself. And then obviously eco-friendly materials. Again, I'm emphasizing that. So that is like, is your product recyclable? Is your packaging recyclable? What have you done to reduce the quantity of packaging that you're using? And here I'll use a classic example. In our own sector, a big retailer like Kroger came and said, you have to reduce the size of your packaging by 20%. So they don't want to give up retail space that is air. So too much packaging with not so much product. Obviously, you're trying to communicate as best as you can. And sometimes your packaging is larger than the content of the actual product itself. Retailers are now starting to push down on us as producers and us as suppliers to say, we need you to reduce your packaging by up to 20%. One of the things that I'm going to talk about now is the emotional connection and what impact that actually has on consumer behavior. So imagine walking into a store and seeing two products side by side. One's very sleek, it's got a nice attractive box, and it kind of practically whispers, take me home, I'm worth it. The other one is a boring paper that says, yeah, I'm here too. Which one are you likely to actually pick up? So the power of your packaging makes consumers feel like they're buying a luxury experience, even if it's just a jar of jam. So let's kind of dive a little bit deeper into how effective packaging can give your product the red carpet within the category. You will also notice that in today's session, what we try to do is emphasize some of the psychological facts behind packaging itself, and what emotional elements that triggers in a consumer's purchasing habit. So nostalgia in packaging, leverage the nostalgia in your packaging design. So it doesn't mean that you're going to go retro. Essentially what that means is try to create that emotional bond where you've triggered positive memories from the past. And that means that if you're focusing your product on a specific demographic that we covered in our first webinar, it might be important to bring some of that nostalgic influence into the actual packaging itself. The next thing is excitement and anticipation. So, this kind of resonates off color psychology and the emotional triggers that has. Colors in packaging evokes specific emotions amongst consumers and influences their choice. So, for example, red creates a sense of urgency or excitement. Blue is often associated with trust and security. So understanding the color choice of your packaging will help you select the right colors to target the right customer that aligns with your brand's image by triggering their emotional response. Also important is obviously the sense of belonging, right? So the shape and texture triggers that perception as well. Rounded shapes evoke feelings of comfort and approachability. Sharp edges convey a sense of sophistication or being modern. Similarly, textured surfaces can also make a package feel more premium and create that tactile connection. So instead of just a flat print, maybe you've got a raised print or a foil print, etc. And again, emphasizing that the first impressions on a new product, and bear in mind, what we're doing out of Africa is challenging the incumbents here in the United States. So we've got to be able to create that emotional impact. Eye-catching designs generate excitement, but they also generate curiosity. Okay, and that's really what we're looking at trying to trigger. Poorly designed packaging, you're just going to get a negative response. So it's crucial to design the packaging that's instantly captivating and resonating that emotional connection with whatever your target audience is. And here I'm going to use a couple of real world examples. And I'm going to use a brand to start off here in the United States called Ben & Jerry's. So they're very well known for using packaging as a tool to communicate what their social positions are. So they integrate messages of equality, environmental sustainability, social standards, etc., etc. So, for example, they've released a flavor called Justice Remixed, and that's a blend of chocolate and caramel, etc., in an ice cream. But Justice Remixed is their communication, which highlights the criminal justice reform here in the United States. Similarly, they've also just launched a flavor called Empower Mint, M-I-N-T, which supports voting rights. You're coming up to an election here in the United States on the 4th of November. So that's what they're really trying to communicate. So their packaging and branding consistently reflects their commitment to these causes. They're not just selling ice cream, right? They're advocating for a better world. And that's really one of the key factors that sets us apart as African producers to our counterparts out of China and India and Vietnam, etc., is that we are advocating for a better world for products that are coming out of Africa that are so good they just haven't had the gap and opportunity to actually get onto US retail shelves. And then also start to consider another brand, for example, Patagonia. Now, Patagonia is a great clothing brand here in the United States, but their packaging is really minimalistic. And their communication tool that they're getting across is the environmental standards that they're having a look at. So they're deeply, deeply committed to sustainability, and that represents or resonates into their packaging choice. So all of their packaging is recyclable. It minimizes waste. They compress the jackets that they sell into these small boxes. What that does in turn is it reduces the carbon footprint, but it also reinforces Patagonia's branding message of conservation to responsible consumers. And that's really what a lot of customers these days are actually starting to have a look at. They really appeal predominantly to your eco-conscious customers that start to value the planet as much as the products that they actually purchase. And again, that is going to set us as African producers apart from our competitors. Africa is very, very much in the focus of US retail at the moment. And lastly, Coca-Cola. You can't get away with it. I mean, their packaging is designed to be instantly recognizable. I mean, even in the dark, if you pick up a bottle of Coca-Cola and you feel it, you're going to know that that's actually Coca-Cola. So another real world example to kind of have a look at is when you are putting a product in gift worthy, what is referred to here as gift worthy packaging. So this is something that you are purchasing that you are either looking to give to somebody as a gift, or otherwise something that maybe you just want to keep around in your drawer for a while. And a good case study to have a look at over here is Lush Cosmetics is one of them, as well as Godiva chocolates. Uh, Africa produces some fantastic chocolate, fantastic cocoa. Uh, you have a look at what a box of Godiva chocolate sells for here in the United States, and it's literally 12 little pieces of chocolates. So, consider the time of the year, et cetera, and consider maybe that if you're aiming at a premium product to challenge a product like Godiva, you need to have a definitive gift-worthy type packaging. So, Lush, again, as I've just mentioned, their packaging that comes out over the holiday periods, etc., is something that you can actually gift. And then also think about something like Hershey's. It's really minimalistic, yet Hershey's Kisses has become iconic. These little small individually wrapped chocolates, it evokes a feeling of affection and care, and is also becoming very, very popular as gifts over special occasions. So now I want to chat to you a little bit about the science and the economics of retail space. So I'm sure that you all know that retail space is prime real estate for product. Okay. It's like kind of trying to get a seat at the cool kids table at high school. Everybody wants to be there, but only the popular and the best kids get in. So what we're going to try to do over here in this section is communicate how we can get your product into that cool kids section, okay, so that you're not left alone sitting in the cafeteria by yourself. And a couple of key points that I'm going to highlight over here is the value of prime placement, space efficiency, and the profitability calculations that retailers look around, turnover rates, and those turnover rates obviously resonate into shelf space allocation as well. So just bear those three points in mind as we move through this. So understanding the retailer's calculations. Okay, retailers are extremely analytical, and they actually have a look at what their return is going to be per square inch. And that becomes critical in terms of how you design your packaging and how easy you make it for them to slot your product into a planogram. And that's depth, width, height, etc. That resonates into what they call gross margin return on investment, because they investing their space in your product. Space is a premium commodity. There is numerous challenges when you go through a reset. So make your packaging easy and understand where you are potentially going to be placed. So understand what the size of the shelf is, or understand what the size of the bunker is, and design your packaging around that to make it easy for the retail. Then what you also need to do is start to have a look at how color, size, and shape influences the appeal on the shelf itself. So Chobani, for example, big brand name, minimalistic packaging, the name resonates, yogurt. Okay. Vibrant colors, on the other hand, a company like Pringles, they've got colors in there, and their name isn't really standing out, but it's the shape of their packaging that really resonates well. And then you have a look at something like Toblerone, for example. That becomes one of those brands that everybody recognizes the packaging of Toblerone. Now, here it's important to consider that, do you want to really challenge one of those iconic brands? Okay. And that really means, do you have the ability to fund, okay, building that type of iconic brand? Or is this something that you are looking at um, getting your product on shelf, working with the retailer, understanding the feedback that you're getting from the people that represent you here in the United States, and deciding where exactly you want to take your product? And I'll cover um, the options between private label and your own brand at a later stage. So just kind of getting back to the economics of packaging design. So cost benefits analysis, that's core. It's a core fundamental on any of your packaging design. Um, think about how much you're prepared to invest to be able to get that initial consumer purchase. That resonates into your customer acquisition cost. It also resonates into your customer lifetime value calculations. Generic versus branded, kind of think where you're going to place your product again. And then also consider things like, do you really want to go with a premium packaging, right? So if you honestly believe that your product is superior and it's premium, then invest in premium packaging. So, that might be an embossed bottle of wine rather than a label. And that then resonates to the customer that is prepared to pay a premium price for that particular item. I'm going to have a quick chat to you now on keeping your packaging refreshed and relevant. So kind of think about it this way. Ever, do you notice that the same old look basically gets old? So imagine if you still wore the same clothes that you did in the 1990s, those neon windbreakers or cargo pants. They were very cool back then, but they're not so cool today. Packaging packaging is exactly the same. You need to refresh it, and you need to stay constant, and you need to stay stylish, and you need to stay relevant. So a couple of key talking points to think about over here is staying competitive in a dynamic market. Okay. Trends evolve quickly. Reinforce your brand's identity. Keep your packaging refreshed. It allows you to reinforce a communication that you're actually trying to get across to the customer, and catch the consumer's eye. So again, going back to that 7 seconds that we spoke to right in the very beginning, make sure that your packaging stands out and catches the customer's eye. And that might mean that you need to invest a little bit in doing a focus group study. As a supplier to the retailers, I thought it was a waste of money. But we designed something that we think is great because we eat, live, and breathe our product, but it might not be relevant to the actual customer itself. So invest a little bit of time and money, and you don't have to do it with a expensive focus group. You can maybe just do it amongst your friends and family. That'll help you decide, what is the right look and feel for your product. So the importance of staying current, okay? You have to understand what the consumer trends are for your product at any given stage. What is trending in Africa is not trending in the United States. And if your focus is what is happening in the United States, make sure that you are aware of what those consumer trends are and be proactive rather than reactive. Okay. Africa and African products is so core at the moment that I use another classic example over here. And I'm just going to pause that for a sec so I don't lose you. An RFP came out with one of the big retailers last week. The RFP is for wines. They are not considering any domestically produced wines because they believe that that market is oversaturated, and they are looking for new world suppliers. So that is now opening up wines from Africa. It's opening up Peru, Chile, even Brazil for some strange reason. It's opening up wines from all of those new world countries. So understand that, there's this current demand for something new that is out there, and position yourself to be able to capitalize on that. Make sure that your brand doesn't stagnate. Okay, just think what happened to Kodak. They failed to adapt to the digital photography revolution, and they've kind of lost their market share now. But then also don't make a mistake where you jump ahead of yourself. Tropicana orange juice redesigned their packaging without doing a focus group in 2019, and they lost a significant amount of their market space. But then also have a look at what Gillette does. Gillette sells razor blades, and they sell the same type of razor blade. All they do is they change the packaging 4 or 5 times. Refresh your logos sometimes, okay, where relevant. Just think about Pepsi, okay, where Pepsi was in the 1800s. If you have a look at the Pepsi logo and the colors that Pepsi uses, have a look at what happened in 1950. So you've got the red, the blue, and the black Pepsi logo. And that is now actually the same colors and same logo design, look and feel that is actually resonating in 2023. So they've gone through an evolution of color changes, a little bit of shape changes, etc. But they've still kept that round logo as part of their corporate packaging identity. We can also have a look at Coca-Cola as an example, and how Coca-Cola's logo changes and the updates that they've had over the period of time. So back in the 1800s, it was just plain black Coca-Cola. But look, in 1900, they started with the Coca-Cola font. So even though it was black and white then, they've resonated that Coca-Cola font all the way through to where it is today. Then also have a look at thinking about, is your product one of those items that is what we consider a seasonal LTO? Okay, so if you've got a chocolate or even a pickle, for example, consider when you might want to change your packaging to focus on a very specific time of the year here in the United States. And here is 4 classic examples. So you've got the same product that is sold over the Easter period in different packaging to what is sold over the 4th of July holidays, to what is sold in the Halloween period, to what is sold in the Christmas period. So it's just the different flavors that you've actually got in your entire range that focuses on a consumer trend and a consumer's buying habit over a specific period in the US. What impact is this going to have on your sales? Okay, so if you are staying relevant, the Nielsen research shows that your packaging, if relevant, refreshed, impactful, will see an increase of between 5 and 20%. This is because you're renewing consumer interest and aligning your product, even though it might be the same product, but you're aligning that product with current trends. So this is one of the questions that we as a company ourselves had, and probably that sits on top of mind for a lot of you as well. And that is considering understanding private label opportunities. We all want to build our own brand. The question is, do we have the checkbook to be able to challenge the big brands that you see here in the United States? So what you need to do is you really need to weigh up the economic considerations if you are offered the opportunity of going into private label, versus, and what guaranteed sales volumes that actually gives you. So private label contracts reduce your need for extensive marketing, okay? Because the retailer now has skin in the game. That directly results in cost savings, especially for you guys as small producers or LTO producers, et cetera, et cetera. The great thing about a private label contract is you don't design the packaging. They incur the cost of designing the packaging because it resonates with something that they have across their entire store. Um, Private label agreements often come with contracts that commit to large orders, or even, maybe not extremely large orders. Maybe it's just a good sized order. But what that does is it brings stability and predictability to your business in terms of revenue. And that, in my opinion, is what is making it extremely attractive for new suppliers and smaller brands. It also goes back to what we covered in our first session last week, where you have, as new suppliers, you've got this intensive focus of US retailers to de-risk their supply chain. And a lot of their private label products are coming out of the East, and they're now looking at Africa to fulfill those gaps in private label products. So, the essential trade-off is, do you build your own brand, okay, or do you reap the benefits of private label? So here's a classic example. Keurig builds coffee machines. They were reliant on Green Mountain to produce the pods. Keurig eventually bought Green Mountain. So if you're keeping your own brand, hopefully your brand is going to attract the attention of somebody large down the line, where they'll either enter into a collaborative partnership with you, or maybe even help you create an exit strategy for yourself down the line. And then also just have a look at, something where you've got a national brand versus private label competition. So everybody knows Heinz ketchup here in the United States, but you've got a Simple Truth, which is a really, really superior item that sells at the same price as Heinz ketchup, and that's available in the Kroger's. The interesting thing here is that Simple Truth outsells Heinz 5-1 because the customer resonates with that private label. So start to think about some of the strategic decisions that you're going to have to make. Evaluate the long-term implications on private label versus investing heavily in your brand. Okay, so for some companies, private label offers a pathway to scale. You might want to start off in your brand, okay, and then eventually have a look at scaling as you start reinvesting in your business, because your demand is getting higher and higher. That might allow you to scale and create a pathway for extra revenue growth. Yes, it's going to be at the expense of your own brand, but it's going to give you the ability to have that stable income. Again, really consider when you believe it's the right time for you to move into private label, if you are offered that opportunity. And those opportunities do come. There is an intensive focus in US retail at the moment on the 80-20 principle, and that is to have 80% of the products branded in the private label of the retailer, and 20% of it being in what they call branded. So that would be your own brand. And essentially what they're looking at doing is they're looking at bringing a brand in, making sure that that brand actually works. And when you see that that brand actually works, it starts to pivot into the private label. So from the day that you get the honor and privilege of converting to a private label product, that period tends to be about 18 months here in the United States. When we got private label, my own opinion was, I can turn this around in 6 months, but you don't work at your pace anymore. You now start to work at the retailer's pace. Have a look at a company like Trader Joe's, for example. Over 90% of what they have in their store is now under their own brand. They've got 3 brands, the Trader Joe's brand, then they've got Trader Joe's 25, and Trader Joe's Organic. So, this is a retailer that we as the Trade Desk actively work with, and they're already in dialogue with us to find producers out of Africa that are prepared to fill the unmet need and move directly into private label. And I'm going to show you what happened to us as a company. So when we launched in Kroger, we launched a brand called Wildside, which is what we own. It was very, very successful for 3 years. Kroger then came to us and said, we're going to change it. We're going to take your product and we're going to change it to private label. What they do then is they then enter into a long-term agreement with you. They've now branded it as the Private Selection brand. It's a brand that they own. And what you see on the left-hand side of your screen is exactly the same product that is on the right-hand side of your screen. The economics behind that is we did $21 million of revenue with the product on the left-hand side of your screen. We made $3.7 million in gross profit because we had to invest $4.2 million in marketing. On the right-hand side, we did $22 million. So I only did $1 million more in revenue on the private label side, but our profit margins doubled to, or almost doubled to $5.6 million because our promotional spend wasn't as high as what it needed to be. Bear in mind, again, emphasizing the fact that the private label actually ensures that the retailer has a vested interest in the success of your product. So with that, we are concluding. We're leaving 10 to 15 minutes. So I just want to thank everybody for being part of today's discussion. And just remember that packaging is far more than a container. It's essentially your silent salesperson. It's your brand ambassador, and it's your first point of contact with customers. So, whether it's about standing out on shelf or creating an emotional connection, maximize the profitability. The role of packaging cannot be overstated at all. We used a lot of scientific facts here. A lot of this information, we're happy to share with you. We're happy to assist and guide you. A lot of us out of Africa don't have the financial prowess to engage massive conglomerate marketing companies, etc., that are going to cost thousands of dollars to help you with your brand positioning, etc. A lot of this you can actually bootstrap yourself and work with the information that is provided. And again, the team from USATD and our associated partners, we're happy to provide you with any guidance, etc., that you may need. Feel free to ask us any questions, drop us an email. There's no cost attached to it or anything along that line. So hopefully, that is now communicated in a very, very short space of time, how important your packaging actually is. So just remember, packaging tells your story long before the consumer even takes it off the shelf. Okay, make sure that story captivates, convinces, and converts. With that, I'd like to say thank you very much for your commitment to excellence in packaging, and then just going to summarize it in your key takeaways today. The critical role of packaging, the importance of the emotional connection, understand the science behind the decisions that the customer is making, and consider your brand versus private label. Remember, if you are offered a private label or the ability to pack in private label, that is a privilege. Okay, weigh up the option of giving up your own brand's identity for the long-term sustainability. At the end of the day, you might then have a small piece of a big pie when you are trying to keep your own brand versus a big piece of a very small pie when you move into private label. This webinar will be made available online. You can get in touch with us, through our website, and you can scan the QR code that you see over here for more information to join our network. And our team is happy to answer any questions. I've got Sue, who's going to have a look at driving those questions.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining our presentation and our webinar. I've had some really great responses coming through in the last couple of minutes. Some of the responses were with regards to sending out the webinar and what we've presented out today. The webinar will be made available on our website. If you go to www.usatd.org and go to the events section, we will load that presentation there. Look out for it starting from tomorrow afternoon or Monday. We just want to get that link out. That was mainly the only questions, and a lot of praises from the attendees on an excellent presentation. Well done, and thank you, Gavin. Everybody has enjoyed it very much. And for those who have sent your email addresses out and asking for us to contact you, I'm making notes of your email addresses, and yes, we'll follow up.
I see there was a question that was asked, and I just want to try to find it quickly.
Personal help. There was another question here. So there's one question, is it possible to have someone personal help for designed packaging? And that was from Coach Yama.
Yeah, look, as the US Africa Trade Desk, we do work with some designers in Africa that are far cheaper than working with designers here in the United States. Please feel free to reach out to us. Sue actually runs our marketing, and she will happily refer you to people that have been vetted and validated, and we understand that they will be able to help create the right identity. They're smaller operators, so their turnaround time is a little bit quicker, and they are also very, very cost effective. It's a lot more cost effective to actually get your brand or your packaging designed in Africa. The other question that I wanted to just answer very quickly was, I saw a question pop up, whether or not you can copyright your packaging. I'm not 100% familiar with actually copywriting a product, but I know that you can either patent a specific design on the packaging that you have, but otherwise you can also trademark your brand and your identity, and that trademark follows a registration period. So it's really not that expensive. It's actually something that you can actually do online yourself to enter a trademark protection, and that basically gives you 2 years to get the product on shelf. And once you've proven that it is now trademarked, once you've proven that it's now on shelf, that TM logo changes to a registered logo, an R logo.
There was also another question on USA packaging standard and guideline document. What you can also do is you can go and search on USDA or FDA packaging guidelines. I do have a copy of that. So, but you can easily search it online, and it'll give you kick out a very, very large document on how to set up the nutritional panels, what sizing of the fonts that must be, the barcode sizing of the fonts, the areas around that, and everything that needs to be present on the packaging and where it needs to be present on the packaging in terms of the front of the packaging, the side of the packaging, the back. That gives a clear guideline of, the title of the product, your net weight, where that should be located, where the information should be located on the top half or the bottom half of the packaging.
And just to add into that, we have a webinar coming up. Just check on our social media pages. We actually have an industry expert that will be able to summarize all of this for you so that you don't have to comb through it in extreme detail. Shakila will be running that webinar. She's an industry expert in all things FDA, USDA here in the United States, an integral member of the USATD team, and we'll be able to provide you with guidance on that. And yes, as Sue mentioned, there's reams and reams of data, so maybe it's a good idea from a USATD perspective that we'll publish maybe just a 1 or 2 page document that will give you some high-level guidance as to what your expectations should be. And we'll let you know when we publish that. I think maybe we can take one more question and then we add our time. However, if I may ask you to please use the poll that is at the top of today's presentation. It'll really just help us understand, did we meet the needs that you had for today, and it'll help us curate whatever else we need to do going forward in all of the webinars that we've got coming up. So once again, guys, thank you very, very much for your time. Please feel free to reach out to us at any stage. We're more than happy to help, more than happy to communicate. Use our team, use our network. We're here to help. We're here to make sure that we get your products successfully on the shelves in the United States. Thank you all for your time.